I'm Paul, behavioral and mental performance expert, and today I'm going to talk about the GABBY Petito story and how succumbing to social media delusions can sometimes turn deadly. And you're going to have a lot that you can take away from the story when it comes to understanding relationships and handling these things today. Now, before I dive in, though, I want to give you a disclaimer. What I'm about to say isn't meant to be disrespectful to the deceased or their families. Having served in the military, I know what it's like to lose people. I know what it's like to lose people and having a lot of, we'll say, suspect circumstances behind the loss. Bad, tumultuous relationships, substance abuse, in some cases, different things, right? And at the funeral, and when talking about the deceased, we're not talking about those things. We're not talking about the terrible circumstances that surrounded somebody's death when you are close to that person or when you care about that person. So I understand that piece all too well. Okay. But here's the thing, with that said, when the family chooses to make a case go public and then chooses to follow up with a documentary, all right, once it's out of the public eye, the case is solved, all right, they choose a couple years later to come public and promote a documentary and a narrative, and that narrative doesn't align with all the facts, it opens us up to scrutiny, opens them up to scrutiny, and it becomes appropriate for us to discuss the truth, which is what we're going to discuss today. So this isn't an attempt to, you have to remember that we're not trying to be disrespectful to the deceased or the families. The families came out with the documentary on Monday and came public and promoted a narrative that's missing some truth to it. So we can absolutely analyze it. And there's a lot of reasons for us to analyze it as well. There's a lot of lessons here for you guys who watch me. And when it comes to dating and relationships and how women act in 2025, particularly of a certain age category, all right, and these are things that we're going to dive into today. Okay, but before I get into the story, let's do a small IQ test. So this thing blew up on my Twitter, and not everybody is operating at a higher IQ on that platform. At least they're either choosing or willfully being stupid, or they just are, right? And so we got to do a little IQ test here to see if you are actually smart enough to be here. Now, I know that sounds crazy, but we're about to have a nuanced discussion. So we need to screen out the dumbasses. All right. So here's the IQ test. Let's pretend I'm in a drug house doing crack. Okay. And a competing crack dealer does a drive-by shooting and I get shot. Am I both the victim of a drive-by shooting and a dumbass for doing crack in some drug house? Am I both? And if you answered, why, yes, both things can be true. You can be both the victim of a shooting and a stupid person who's making poor choices. If that's your answer, then congratulations. You passed the IQ test. We can have this conversation on the internet. Okay. But not everybody seems to be able to have that conversation. Not everybody is seemingly intellectually capable of holding two ideas in their head at once. And in this case, two things can be true. She can be, GABBY Petito can be the victim of a murder. And she also can be a social media brained person with narcissistic traits who put herself in a position to get killed. Those things can both be the same answer. You understand? So when I get into this story and I talk about the traits about the victim that are unfavorable, that are bad, for the purposes of us learning about things like social narratives, learning about behaviors in relationships and in toxic relationships. When I bring those things out, I'm not saying she wasn't murdered or isn't a victim in some ways, right? Two things can be true. And if you can't understand that, this isn't the place for you. All right. It's just not. We're going to have a nuanced discussion. And, I welcome you here for the discussion. Okay. And so, looking at somebody now in the comments section, you can put out your comments, put out your opinions, keep it respectful as much as you can with each other. But, let's try to have a higher level discussion here. That's what we're going to try to do. Okay. So with that, let's look at, this is the, hey, too long, didn't read, you're out of the loop, you have no idea what I'm talking about. Here's what the story is. So GABBY Petito was a 22-year-old aspiring social media influencer who documented her van life road trip with her boyfriend Brian Laundrie on Instagram. And she was looking to build a following and be an influencer. Now, she gained nearly 1 million followers before she was found strangled to death in Wyoming in 2021. Brian, who returned home alone with their van before disappearing himself, was later found dead by unaliving himself, okay, with a note confessing to her murder. All the evidence points that he's the murderer as well. And the story has now resurfaced due to a Netflix documentary that the family seems to have wanted to promote it and put out. And that just came out on Monday. So that is what's going on. But here's the thing. There's some interesting things that the documentary seems to have glossed over. All right. And when you watched it. So I'll share some of the things. Let me get into my sharing here. So we're going to share some stuff. Hopefully I won't get demonetized for sharing things. We'll see. So this is the video that got put out that they were filming. You can watch parts of it. All right. So what you'll see is
GABBY Petito never goes outside.
They're trying to present an avatar of this perfect couple who's free and driving the country and sightseeing and seeing things in a van. This is like, the dream for a lot of Zoomer women. All right. This is their dream. They have no responsibility, have a guy, that's with them and whatever. Okay. And I'll say, in my life, like my circumstance, my girlfriend, we do stuff like this all the time. Like we take road trips, we go sightseeing. So it is pretty amazing. I'm not an influencer who's documenting this stuff, right? And that's not my interest. But this is the whole video. The whole video is just them, 8 minutes of them being a dream couple and traveling around in a van. Okay, and this has like 8 million views to it. So I'll tell you where we're at in society. Now, a lot of the reason for those views, of course, is the case. And the case was very, very public. So the case was all over everywhere. Okay. And so now I'm going to present to you. So there's their perfect life. There's their perfect van life. I mean, ignore the fact that both people are not alive anymore. But that's the perfect life that they presented. And that video is on, you can search that up pretty easily on YouTube, on the internet. So I'm going to show you now a different video with some different footage, and we're going to see where your biases are. Okay. So let's go take a look at something else. And then I got a ton of points to make about it. Let me navigate my internet here to share the screen. Okay, is that the one? Yeah, I think this should be it. All right, let's watch this. Now, this is the body cam footage from police when they got picked up for domestic violence scenario. He was seen by somebody else, called it in. He was seen, was reported he was slapping her But when the police arrived, found the van was swerving all over the road, hit a curb, and then they got pulled over. And so there's a physical altercation between this loving, perfect couple who's out living in a van, pretending, that being homeless is somehow pleasurable. I guess, I don't know. So these two people who are, willfully living a homeless life get into a fight. All right. And now here is the body cam footage from that. Now, this is stuff they did not show on the Netflix documentary. The Netflix documentary showed some of the body cam footage, but they didn't show all of it. And so that's what is very interesting. They showed what supports the narrative. Now, the narrative from the documentary and the media is that Gabby is this innocent victim who really was this wonderful person who got roped up into a domestic violence situation. And this is because, domestic violence is terrible, which it is. And men are bad, of course. And men are just, out there having domestic violence all over the place to innocent victims. And here's a story of this documented case of this innocent victim who, was just being brainwashed and had domestic violence, and then eventually got murdered. That is not the whole story. That is not even that is a skewed version of what was really happening. And there's a reason why we need to point this out and talk about it. But let's look at the body cam footage for a few minutes.
So she gets a little. We take those. Sorry about that. It's okay. Do you need any water? That's okay. It's hot out here. We were going to get water because we ran out, but it's okay. No, it's okay. I don't like plastic bottles. It's okay. Thank you. But we just had a little disagreement there. Disagreement was just that she was getting a little worked up, and I was saying, "No, it's okay. Thank you so much."
It's not his fault. That's good.
All right, body language, behavioral perspective. You can tell he's nervous. He's nervous to be talking to the police, but so is she when the camera goes to her. Okay, and he's trying to sort of navigate this situation. You can tell he's very nervous. Who wouldn't be in this scenario? Let's continue.
So it was just more of a disagreement than that. I just wanted to. What was the disagreement about? It was. I wouldn't even call it disagreement. It was just that I'm dirty and I can't change being dirty. Like I got dirty feet. I got sand on my flip flops and stuff like that. It was that we were at the coffee shop for so long because we were there from 9 to 3. So yeah, there's a few little things, little relationships. I'm in a relationship, but I'm sure I've been married for over 5 years now. So there's a lot of little things. Right? Yeah, I can go. And I get it. We weren't physical before the point where I said, all right, let's just take a breather and like walk away for a minute. I'll lock the van up and I'll go for a walk this way, and you can go walk that way on the block. There's that what's it called, moonflower? Right. Yeah, nice areas. You can go either way. It's all
okay, so, and I have to make comments in between just so that, they don't say I'm stealing some video from somewhere, right? So what it sounds like for those of you who are not completely biased towards the victim, the Gabby being the victim here, right? What you're looking at is a guy who is describing a story where she was mad at him and upset because his feet were dirty and she didn't want him to be in the van and she was having a fit. And you can tell as he's telling the story, he's not wanting to paint her out to be a bad person. He's not sitting there going, oh, you know what? She did this and she did that to me, and let me show you the marks. He's not trying to paint her. He's not running a smear campaign against her. You know what I mean? Like many abusers do, where they try to make the other person look bad and they try to kind of smear the other person and convince law enforcement the other person is like this bad person. He's trying to, downplay the situation. He's trying to like, oh, we just got into a tiff. Like, sometimes couples get into things. Like, he's trying to normalize it. He's trying to downplay it. This is not a guy who is trying to manipulate police right now into having a bad opinion of his girlfriend. Okay. That's not what's happening here. He's trying to minimize any damage that could happen to her. He's actually trying to protect her. She was starting this fight and starting a problem. Now, she's this innocent, perfect person who could do no wrong, according to the documentary. What kind of person is screaming and yelling at her boyfriend to the point where it gets physical because his feet are dirty and she doesn't want him to get into the van? This is something, if you have dealt with, if any therapists out there will know, that have done couples therapy and have dealt with people with borderline personality disorder, people with, narcissistic personality disorder. Now, keep in mind, nothing that I say here is a diagnosis of either of these people. I can't diagnose them. There's in that way, but these are some of the traits and the signs, right? Finding small things and making them huge and blowing up, having a argument that isn't just being in a bad mood or an argument, but taking it to a level. This argument got taken to a level where he is trying to dissipate the argument and saying, hey, I'm just going to go for a walk and separate myself so we can calm down. And she's not having it. All right. So that so far sound like an innocent victim that can do no wrong. Interesting, right? Let's keep going.
Let's go for a little walk and breathe. We'll come back. Just breathe. Happy with it. I'm not upset with her. She got worked up and she had a phone in her hand and her keys and everything. And she wanted, not her keys, like her rings, the phone. And I was holding on to the keys because I didn't want to go anywhere. And my big fear is, I don't have my phone. I don't have a phone. So she goes off without me. But all right, I'm on my own.
So he's actually afraid that if he leaves the keys, she's going to drive off and leave without him. That she's so emotionally erratic that she's going to ditch this guy in the middle of Utah somewhere in the desert, all right, or ditch him at a coffee place and leave him because she's mad at him, all right? And so he doesn't want to hand the keys over to her. He just wants to lock the van up, take a walk. That doesn't sound like somebody who's in a functional relationship with this great girl. And that certainly doesn't sound like somebody who's victimizing and brutalizing some woman, as the narrative says. We'll continue.
I was saying, let's just go for a walk, and she was trying to get the keys for me, so I was just going, just wait, back up.
So she's getting physical with him and trying to grab the keys from him when he's saying, I'm just going to go for a walk, we'll separate, and we'll try to calm down. She's not letting the situation calm down. She is getting physical with him and trying to fight him.
That's what she did me, and I didn't get, I don't want to push you, but I didn't get overtly physical. I was just trying to keep her away and not get hit. And then I got really loud and like that's fun.
So he is trying to push her away, get her off of him, and she is getting physical with him. She is the one who's hitting him. Now, I don't know if they'll cover here if I queued it up in the right place, but he has, and if you watch the documentary, though, they do show it, he has marks on his face and stuff. He's trying to minimize to the cops the fact that she's hitting him in the face. And that he's trying to, when he gets into the story, when you watch the whole body cam footage, if you want to spend an hour to watch it, he's not trying to say she's beating me up and help me, right? Like he is not trying to throw his girlfriend under the bus, which, by the way, is not the actions of someone who is a serial abuser and brainwasher and doing all the things that he was accused of in the documentary. Let's continue.
Like, whoever was attention where I was going, back up, get away, just give me a...
Okay, so you said you pushed her to create some distance, obviously, right? What happened after that? What got the scratches on your eye?
The phone.
The phone? So you pushed her and she hit you?
It wasn't like a push and she jumped on me. She was already, I don't want to... She's already swinging, and I was.
He doesn't want to tell the police what happened. She was swinging and hitting him. So far, though, does this sound like an innocent victim of domestic violence? Some poor little girl who is just trying to film herself in a van and live this innocent little girl dream. and we all need to save her from the abuse of men out there? Or is this somebody who is actively a participant in an abusive relationship? In other words, I'm not going to say this guy's not abusive as well. Maybe he's done things to her. He clearly murdered her. So this is not a defense of this guy. You have to understand that. Remember, back to the IQ test, you got to hold two ideas in your head at the same time. I'm not saying this guy is, all right, a real douchebag in a number of ways. And I'll make that point a little bit later in this video. As part of the warning sign to not be a douchebag and not be this guy. Okay. This guy is a problem. No question. But she is not this innocent victim who is just being brutalized by this guy. That is what the documentary makes it sound like, because we need a narrative to protect cute little white girls. When the reality is, though, that cute little white girl had something wrong with her. She's displaying at least traits of a borderline personality disordered person, or perhaps a covert narcissist. I'd actually lean more towards the covert narcissism for a number of reasons, but either way, this is the kinds of behavior of somebody like that. Okay. That's being when you start picking apart some of this other evidence. We'll continue here.
A lot of angles, a lot of nails, a lot of rings.
Yeah, you got 3 scratches on your neck. You got one on your left side of your neck.
They're going over the marks on his face. Now, she has one mark on hers because, according to him, he grabbed her face and pushed her off of him. All right. And so that left a mark on her face. The marks on her, there's a bruise on her arm that would indicate that somebody's stopping or grabbing an elbow, like when someone's trying to hit you and you're grabbing, embracing their arms. So that's the kinds of marks that she has on her.
Do you mind lifting up your right sleeve for me? I'm curious about something.
Oh, okay. Yeah, it's a little bit of nails. I suppose fingernails, but I'm not complaining. I'm not complaining about fingernails.
Is it bruised or tender or anything like that?
Okay. I'm fine, and I look at it. I hope she doesn't have too many complaints about me. I'm just, I feel bad I can get so public. I was just...
You?
All right.
I didn't get that far into it. She was hyperventilating.
She's saying that they don't drink, but at the point when you lit them up,
you don't drink or anything. I was yelling at him, and then when he did realize that, I kind of lifted her arm, like,
that she's saying was like hit the curb. You said it was Gabby?
So she is now telling the part of the story where she is corrupt. She is telling how she is hitting him. She is striking him. She is emotionally erratic and hitting him while he was driving. She says in this clip that she had grabbed the steering wheel and tried to turn the vehicle. He is trying to minimize what she did, and it was like, oh, she was just really nervous, and when she saw a cop, she said, well, like pull over. He's trying to minimize the story, what's happening. She's telling the story from her perspective. It corroborates everything that she is saying or he is saying, right? And so it's like the story matches when they're separated, and it's a story of her being erratic and out of control and trying to hit this guy, creating this terrible situation, trying to steer the car into the side of the road, all kinds of stuff. All right. So that's the story. When you watch the documentary, somehow all these details are more or less glazed over or missed. And this guy is somehow presented as this master manipulative abuser type of a guy. All right. So let me ask you some questions that nobody seems to be addressing now that we've seen all that. How does a 21-year-old girl who worked minimum wage at Taco Bell suddenly find herself living a dream, at least on the internet, van life, which included purchasing a van, fixing it up and gearing it up for travel, right? Which costs quite a few $1,000s to get one of these vans ready. And then traveling and living out on the land without a source of income, with enough money to pay for phone service, internet access, and no job, no source of income other than maybe what she might be able to generate from a blog, but that hadn't started yet. So she had to get a start somewhere. How does somebody making minimum wage and paying for all of her bills afford that? Ask yourself that question. I'll come back around to it. Okay. Another, jeez, excuse me. Another question. If he was an abusive monster, if she was this innocent victim as portrayed in the documentary, why do we have this body cam footage? Why does a story that she is telling and he is telling tell a story that is not of a guy beating the crap out of his girlfriend, right? Why did the police separate them and put him, the guy, in the hotel for domestic violence victims rather than jail? Because I'll tell you, when police respond to domestic violence cases in most counties, somebody is going to jail, and that somebody is usually a man. Now, things have gotten a little bit better with that. A lot of police are understanding now more than they did in the past. I don't have any data or numbers on it, but I'm seeing more scenarios, it seems like, and maybe law enforcement can collaborate this, or attorneys or people who work in that field. It seems like more and more when girls are the aggressor, they are being taken into custody. It's not like it was where it was almost a guarantee that the man was going someplace and the girl could get away with it no matter what. Like, women are being taken into custody more when the evidence shows that they're aggressors, which I say is a good thing because we want the guilty person to go to jail, not just the guy with the penis, right? Like, we want fair, we want things to be fair. We want to put the right people in jail, whether it's a male or female. So I mean, I would say it's probably happening, but I would say if there's any inkling or any room to believe that the guy is the one being abusive and being an aggressor, they're taking that guy into custody. The guy's going to spend a night in jail, not in a hotel room for domestic violence victims, where usually girls go. And that's where he got sent. It was a hotel room that in some cases where they need to separate couples and they don't want to take the woman to jail, they'll take her to this hotel room to stay the night there and then sort it out the next day, which is, by the way, nice. It's nice that this, Utah, this whatever county this was, has that service and can do that. That's very good for them. All right. I think that's great. That being said, why would why would the boyfriend be taken to that hotel if he was this abusive person? Why does this scenario even exist at all, right? Why does he have marks on his face? Why isn't the documentary presenting this in the media presenting this full story, right? Ask yourself that. Another thing, which you'll find out later in the documentary, if she was so afraid of him, as the documentary proposes and all the interviews from her, we'll say, fans and followers and friends and people who knew her, right? Why would she's this great person and he's this controlling, abusive man, and she was just so afraid of him, right? If she's so afraid of him, why is she grabbing steering wheels and trying to beat him up? That doesn't sound like somebody who's afraid of an abuser. Somebody who's instigating fights, somebody who's starting arguments over dirty feet, somebody who's grabbing steering wheels and trying to steer a van into a ditch or into that side of the road, right? That doesn't sound like somebody who's scared for her life. Does that sound like someone scared for her life for you? I've met and worked with, in some different capacities in my life, abuse victims, women who were genuinely and severely abused. I couldn't imagine them trying to fight and like the abuser in this way, trying to, start a fight with a guy that she's afraid of because he has dirty feet. It's just not, those two things don't really go together, you see. Now, if she's so afraid of him, why did she feel safe having a Bumble account? Now, I had some people on Twitter, I don't know if it's true, say that there's a friend option on Bumble account where you can like meet a friend. Yeah, it's an option. How many of you guys out there? I'm an older guy, so maybe this is something you weirdos do who are younger, right? But I don't know anybody really, and I know my girlfriend's in her 20s, so I know people of all age categories. I don't know anybody who's going on Bumble to meet friends. I don't know. I mean, they have social media to meet friends. Like a girl might connect with another girl on social media and then meet her out for a cup of coffee and become friends with her. But to go on Bumble and do that, I don't know if there's a high percentage of people doing that. Not to mention, it's also a dating app. So it kind of has a dual purpose there. How many boyfriends out there, those of you guys and girls who might be listening, how many of y'all are comfortable with your significant other going on a dating app because he or she is, just going to meet some friends? I don't know. That sounds suspect. But regardless of that one, if he's an abusive, controlling guy, why would she feel safe being able to do that? You know what I mean? Like, even if there was nothing wrong with the Bumble thing was innocent. I think a person who's a victim of abuse and has a controlling boyfriend isn't going to feel safe having that account. Why would she feel safe texting her ex-boyfriend? So later in the documentary, she hits up an ex-boyfriend and she's texting him and calling him and talking about how she wants to leave her boyfriend and she could take this van and go take him with her on this van life, adventure. I don't know. That's called cheating. In my world, reaching out, if you're in a relationship and you're reaching out to an ex and telling the ex that you're going to leave the guy you're with or the girl you're with to be with that person, that's a cheat. That's cheating. Maybe not physically cheating, but we call it emotionally cheating. How many of you girls, all two of you are watching this, how many of you girls would be cool with your boyfriends texting an ex saying, yeah, my girlfriend's this and that and the other, and she's super controlling and I hate her. I can't wait. I'm going to leave her and come get you and take you on adventures. How many of you girls would be good with that? How many of you guys would be cool with your girlfriends hitting up exes to emotionally dump on them about how bad you are? So is this the behavior of a innocent, moral, good girl who's just roped up in an abuse scenario with a terrible abuser? I don't know. In my world, that person, because I've talked to those people in real life, I've met those people in real life, girls who were in really bad scenarios and had to go through hell to get out of them. They weren't texting exes while in the relationship when the guy can go look on her phone and having phone calls with exes. They'd be too afraid to do that. Why would she feel so comfortable? You see what I mean? Now, there are a lot of questions like these that should crop up when you're watching this documentary, if you choose to watch it. All right. When you look at this story, which is a media frenzy back in like 2021, there are a lot of questions you should have in your head. Now, if these aren't questions that are cropping up for you, you got to ask yourself something about your biases. If you're watching this thing or had been following this story and you're not wondering at all about the details in her behavior, well, maybe this will explain why. All right. So maybe I'll share this clip. All right. I'm going to share this clip of one of my favorite comedians to maybe explain why none of these questions cropped up for you. Or and if it did, why these questions are not cropping up for a lot of people out there, particularly in the media and so forth. This might explain it. I'll play one of my favorite comedians, the great late.
How long they would look for if she was missing.
How
long they would look for if you look at her and then white woman is the value. You look at her and then, you can tell how pretty a white woman is. The value. You look at her and then you wonder how long they would look for if she was missing. Come on, take a look. Take a look. Look at this nigga. Look. I saw you look mad, sweetie. How long, if you was missing, how long you think they were? Exactly. She went. You know the deal. I ain't saying nothing wrong. White woman's life is valuable. What's his name? Joran Vandersloot, right? We find out he was a serial killer. Man, he kills women. That's what he do. He do it well. You know what I mean? We know the girl that he supposedly had. What's the girl in Aruba? Natalie Holloway, right? But the one he just killed, the girl in Peru. What's her name? Exactly.
All right, makes the point. All right, now I'm not some race baiting guy. You guys, those of you know me, follow my stuff. I'm not quick to call racism or anything like that. All right, but this is true, isn't it? If it's a cute white girl, like for some reason we give her all the passes on her own behavior. It's like she can do no wrong. She fits somehow some angelic archetype. If roles were, if it was a black woman or a Hispanic woman, how many Hispanic women and young girls are trafficked every single day coming across the border with some of the things that were going on with the border, right? And being trafficked, showing up missing, getting killed. How many black women? How many young black girls? Young Hispanic women? Lots of them, dude. Like, go look the statistics up. You never hear their names. Cute white girl with the van blog gets 2,000 miles worth of searches in a media frenzy. I'm not saying, like, I'm not somebody to be like a race baiting guy or a racist guy or call out racism just to call it out. All right. But there's something going on with that for some reason. And then let's take a look at it differently. What if roles were reversed and it was a guy? What if the guy was actually killed, which is pretty rare. And I will say that's the one thing is that, guys, domestic partner violence, if somebody's going to end up unalived, it's usually the woman, okay, because men are stronger and more capable of executing that crime. And so, that happens. All right. So women do need to be careful because men can be dangerous. That's a very true thing. All right. But if roles were reversed, what if she had gotten the ex-boyfriend who seemed like a weak guy as well, but what if she got him to unalive her current boyfriend? That happens a lot. Or maybe it's not the girl who does the killing, but maybe it's the girl who manipulates another guy to do the killing. That actually happens quite a bit. Would we be giving the guy the same pass? Would we be saying when we see body cam footage of a domestic violence scenario where the guy instigated it, would we be saying, oh, he's that poor guy was, he was trapped in a bad relationship? And would we remove all accountability for the male in the situation if roles were reversed? We would not. Hell, we wouldn't even be removing accountability if it was a black woman or if it was a Hispanic woman. So there's something going on in our culture. I'm not sure what exactly, but where we give like the most privileged class in society, which is white women, we give cute little white girls passes for like everything. We just want to remove. There's something about the mainstream media and mainstream culture that just wants to remove all accountability from these girls. As long as she appears like cute and innocent, there's always going to be an army of simps and people with simp psychology that are going to run to that girl's rescue. All right. That's an important thing to notice in our society. You're not going to change it, but you probably need to notice it. So let's now go into the too long, didn't read version, the true story of the Gabby Petito story. If I were directing the damn Netflix special, and if I were actually, if we wanted honesty and truth in the media, what would we be hearing about? Well, what we'd be hearing about is that this woman is, yes, a victim of murder. That's true. And yes, that's very tragic. Okay. But she was also a social media brained Zoomer who very likely fell into narcissism or narcissistic behavior due to her social media obsession. So there is something in psychology that is sort of being looked at and worked on, but there's an idea in a theory, we could call it, that social media causes narcissistic traits. When you look at personality disorders, things like borderline personality disorder, antisocial personality disorder, or narcissism, they're actually traits. There's a number of traits, and in order to meet the diagnostic criteria, you have to fit a number of those traits, and you can't just fit them a little bit. You have to fit them to a pretty significant scale. So having a little bit of a narcissistic trait, for example, could just mean like you're self-confident, right? That's not pathological. That's not a problem. It's not a problem believing in yourself and being self-confident. But taken too far to delusion, it becomes a narcissistic trait, you see? And that's how the traits work in a psychological diagnosis for these different things. There's a theory, and I think it's a pretty good one, that's being social media brained. And by the way, for men, being porn brained, okay, guys that are addicted to and obsessed with porn. And for women, addiction to social media is very much like a porn addiction for women. Pornography doesn't seem to be as damaging for women as it is to men to look at and to whatever. And there's not as many women prone to addiction to pornography, but women are very susceptible, it seems more so than men, to being addicted to social media. And it's just the way that our brains are evolutionarily wired differently. Okay. A man's brains are evolutionarily wired a little bit differently than a woman's, and women seek social proof and social interest. This is why reality shows and stuff like that tend to be more directed, tend to be something that women watch more than men. Okay. And women are more susceptible to becoming social media brained, meaning they lose their sense of reality and everything becomes about the show that they're presenting on social media. And that behavior makes somebody very, very narcissistic, because part of narcissistic behavior is they want to put out a show or they want to put out a persona. And what's important to the narcissist and what's real to the narcissist is that the image is seen a certain way. So the actual objective reality, the real relationships, the connection with other people, the preventing somebody else, not harming someone else and doing something good or benevolent for somebody else, those things don't matter to the narcissist. What matters is the appearance of those things. So a narcissist is focused on appearances and doesn't care about the actual people involved or the relationships. Somebody who is addicted to social media turns into that. And one thing we see from the documentary, which they say freely because they're not seeing it as a problem, was that she was documenting everything. She was always filming, always wanted to put up a persona, always wanted to put stuff out there on social media. That was in her social media persona was more important to her, based on the interviews, based on what her friends said, based on all the people who loved her and said she's so great, words out of their mouth, okay, was that my interpretation as a behavioral expert is that her appearances in social media became more important than the real relationships and the things that were going on. When somebody does that, they open themselves up to risk, into danger, and they open themselves up to harming other people, you see? So GABBY was harmful to other people in her life, whether she realizes it or not, and whether the people that they're choosing to interview are saying so or not. And she's harming herself by being involved in relationships maybe she shouldn't be involved in, right? Because she is more concerned about appearances. This is what we call narcissistic delusion. When the objective reality gets skewed and to resemble something that's not true, not even remotely true in some cases, to support the delusion of the narcissist, that's a narcissistic delusion. And when people get social media brain, they get trapped in that. Okay. That is the story that you're seeing here because her behavior is narcissistic. Okay. You never hear about her doing anything for anybody else in this story. Not really. Everybody is focused on her and like propping her life up. You don't hear about the charity work she did, or she helped somebody else out, or she took somebody's shift at Taco Bell because they were having trouble and needed to, handle an emergency. Like you don't hear altruistic behavior. You have the appearance of it because it's a cute little white girl filming herself and everything's, putting that appearance out there like that video, that 7-minute video that's on their channel that has 8 million views. That video doesn't match the reality when you look at the body cam footage and when you look at the fact that 2 people are dead now. You see what I'm saying? So yeah, is this harsh? Yes, but it's true. And we need to accept that truth because there's a number of lessons here. And you miss and you lose all those lessons. And women walk away from the story with more of a sense of being a victim than they do empowered, whether they realize it or not. And men walk away from this story with more of a sense of being like maybe accused or looked at as bad because of their of them being just a man or whatever, than actually having a sense of what is really going on here, right? Men don't walk away from the lesson they need to learn. And women especially are affected poorly by this and they don't even realize it. They just want to jump on the narrative. She was victimized and guys are abusive. That's what the narrative is. And that's not the story. Okay. If you guys have things in the chat or if you do super chats or whatever, I will definitely get to them towards the end. Okay. Just FYI. So what's the real story? Well, this girl has a narcissistic social media brained dream of making her living as a van life influencer. She wanted to live in a filtered fantasy world and present this online thing, right? And that was her world. And with that, the manipulation begins. Okay, whether she's a clinical narcissist who is diagnosable from the start, which I don't know that that's true. I don't have the evidence that that's true, and I'm not even claiming that. But what may have happened is a normal girl grows up in front of a screen, which means she's not developing other social skills. If it's true that she was on Bumble to meet friends, that's not something that people with good social skills do. No offense to anybody who does that, so there's some lacking of social skills. When I say lacking, I mean, people under the age of 25 aren't even going to get what I'm talking about right now. But, you can meet people first in person and not with a screen in front of you. You guys know that, right? Like there are people out there who filter everything through the screen. And even when they meet somebody in person, a screen gets put in the way. We're going to take a picture. We're going to take a selfie. We're going to connect on Instagram. We're going to text back and forth. You know what I mean? And so like the online screen way of connecting with somebody is like becomes more important than the actual connection for a lot of people, especially young people out there. That's damaging. Okay. I'm going to get to the lessons here. That is damaging. That opens you up to getting into relationships you shouldn't be in. I mean, she was not a perfect person, but she shouldn't have been with this guy either. This guy was a problem. And she was in this relationship because of social media brain. Okay. When you don't have good social skills and you put everything through a screen, and men, when you date girls like that, okay, you're dealing with somebody who is a functioning narcissist. A narcissist is not necessarily evil and going around doing terrible things to people all the time on purpose. A narcissist is just self-centered. And when you're dealing with somebody who uses social media like that and who's social media brained, they become a functioning narcissist. Your feelings, thoughts don't matter unless it pertains to the image that she needs to portray to the outside world. The branding, the image, all that stuff is what is important. And the real person isn't important anymore. This is a serious problem. We miss that message when we lie about the details of a story like this. Okay, we miss that. And girls walk away thinking like, oh, if I date the wrong guy, I'm going to end up in the woods. You know what I mean? Like, yeah, okay, that's true. But there's a lot of ways to not end up in the woods. There's a lot of ways to not end up with that dude, right? And being social media brained and getting into relationships where you're so concerned about appearances and not concerned about the substance of the relationship could end up with you in the woods. Okay. So you need to have, like, for girls particularly, you need to be empowered with skills and an understanding of the true story. The lie that men will kill you if you're not careful. Okay. It's not really a full lie because there's guys out there who would do that. And there's situations that could be dangerous for women. And you need to, like, have that understanding, but you also need to have the other side of it, which is that you have power here. Both men and women have power in this circumstance. This guy should have gotten out of this relationship or never should have started it, but he was too weak and too much of a weenie to do it. He had his problems, right? And emotional problems. And she could have gotten out of this thing sooner too. Neither one of them did it. And a lot of that is because of the problems they had psychologically. We can't go over that if we don't look at the truth. So Gabby had her first boyfriend, the guy she was cheating on. But when you get into it, they don't say why they broke up. They broke up on good terms. Okay, sure. But what's the reality? The reality is he couldn't fund or support her dreams. That's the reality. She met the new guy, all right, the boyfriend, Brian, whose parents were wealthy. When you look into it by internet search, the internet says $7 million net worth. I don't know what their actual net worth is, but the internet says that there were several $1 million. This guy was living on somebody's couch with no income. People don't live and survive without incomes. Like, those of you who are not in the social media brained world and exist in reality understand that things cost money. Most of you guys listening hopefully understand that shit costs money. Somebody's not living on somebody's couch without somebody funding them to live there. They have to eat food somehow. They have to they have to buy things to survive, even if they're living rent free on someone's couch. So this dude had what anyone who grew up in a suburban America, right, knows people like this. He had an infinite safety net. I'm not saying his parents were just like sending him money every month and funding a lifestyle. His parents probably wanted him to do something with his life. And he was working odd jobs, probably stuff like that, not really making anything of himself. He was basically a loser, Zoomer male, which unfortunately a lot of these males are like that. Something I recommend not doing. All right. If you follow my material, if you want a good life, good relationships, a healthy mindset as a man, you can't be a loser Zoomer type male who's living off of other people. You got to find your vocation and start learning how to support yourself. That being said, there's no way this guy was couch surfing and doing all this stuff without parents' money involved somehow. Okay. If he got in any kind of trouble, his parents were there as a safety net. We know this because when he showed up with the van and a missing girlfriend, they covered his ass, right? So he had his parents' money. The ex-boyfriend didn't have that and wasn't able to fund her dreams. This guy had that. So he had no job that he was tied to, no life he was tied to. He could just, wander the world with her and get that safety net of parents' money if they ever got in trouble. I'm not saying she didn't pay for some of her own things, but it's like a lot of women today, okay, cute little white girls with parents that support them, live in a fantasy world. They're not out there there's a lot of women who don't live in a fantasy world and who are out there making their own living and do better than some of the men, right? We know that. But there's a lot of women out there that are just living off of other people and other things. And it's okay if they are, and they're offering value. Like a housewife, for example, hopefully offers value to her husband, and she's not working. Like, there's nothing wrong with that. Okay. But there's a lot of women out there who are like, they pretend that they're supporting themselves. Like this girl working at Taco Bell, working minimum wage jobs. Meanwhile, somebody else is providing her for a place to live. Somebody else is funding the basics of like her lifestyle. Somebody else is providing that safety net. So she gets to pretend like she's doing it all herself and paying for it all herself, when really there's other people taking bills away from her, taking responsibilities from her. So it's like almost like having a teenager. It's like when your teenager goes to work at the grocery store to pay for their own stuff, but really mom and dad pays for food and rent. You see what I mean? Like, that's how a lot of these adult Zoomers live their damn lives. That's certainly what they were doing here. If the ex-boyfriend was so great to the point where she needed to emotionally cheat with him, hit him up and, want to be rescued, saved by him, talk about traveling the country with him in a van. Why'd she leave the ex-boyfriend if he was so great? Well, the reason why is because that guy couldn't fund. This is what I'm speculating. He could not fund her lifestyle. Brian could fund the lifestyle. So that starts off right there. It's already a narcissistic, framework. Somebody's willing to discard somebody else to use someone else, and then get into, it's all about the fantasy and the appearances. And then they just abruptly left. If you follow the documentary, they had been seeing each other for a number of months, but like when they had the money and the means and the ability, they just packed up a car and left. Gabby had no regards for her family, no regards for her parents, no regards for anybody else but herself. This was not a discussion. At 22 years old, she was living, partially off and with her family. No discussion with mom or dad. Like, even at 22, it's not that she needs permission. But dude, if I'm going to move somewhere, my mom lives in Florida. I live in Michigan. If I'm going to go move, I'm calling my mom. Like, I'm going to talk to her about it at least. There's going to be a discussion. I don't need her permission. But like, people with healthy relationships with parents who aren't, social media brain narcissists have discussions with family. It's not a surprise. When you follow the documentary, she just packed up car and left. And then where'd they go? They go purchase a van and travel? No, they went to Brian's parents' house and lived off of his parents for a while. So these are two Zoomers living off of other people. Yeah, she worked at Taco Bell and saved some money. And the documentary looks like she was, this hard worker funding this trip. And maybe she was a good worker. I don't really know. The documentary says she was, and she could have been. That could be true. But where's the money coming from? There's a safety net from Brian's parents. And that's what caused her to be in that relationship more than anything else. And leaving him would remove that safety net. If she left him, then she would have to go back to her parents' house. She'd have to work out a financial agreement with the van. She would have to be an adult is what it would require. And she wasn't prepared to do that. So she was sticking in this relationship and then trying to manipulate the relationship emotionally and devalue him and control him, as evidence of the police body cam footage. All right. So that's what we're dealing with. We're dealing with two delusional Zoomers trapped in an unhealthy relationship. And she is a delusional girl who is pushing this narrative. This guy was kind of like, I think the blog idea is kind of stupid. He was an emotionally, erratic, weak person. Like, this guy was not a good guy. I'm not defending him at all. I'm sure I'll get some comments by people who can't hold two ideas in their head at once, which means they didn't pass the IQ test, telling me I'm a terrible person for defending this murderer. I'm not defending him. Okay. He's not, he's far from a good person. Okay. He's a loser who scams and lives off of other people. And now he took his own life because he had no value. He didn't build value in his life. He had no value. His only value was supporting this girl's dreams. He was a guy who found a girl to like him and was just supporting this girl's dreams because of it. all right, and didn't have value on his own, which is very dangerous, okay? And she was abusing that until he finally snapped, is basically what happened. So she is living off this guy, using him, and then cheating on him, all right? She has a Bumble account. I'm sorry. I still maintain, but I'm open to being wrong here, but I maintain that if you're in a relationship, in a commitment, you're not on Bumble. You're not on dating apps, even just to meet friends, quote unquote. I don't think that is really a good, like, a thing you should be doing. Now, hey, I'm an older guy. Maybe it's a Zoomer 19, 20, 21-year-old thing that people do now, and maybe I'm wrong. But I think it's a little dualistic that a girl can have be on an app where she puts up a profile, okay, and then I'm meeting friends. But all she has to do is take that same profile, go to another part of the app, and then swipe on dudes and have conversation with guys and cheat and send over nude photos or do whatever they do. You see what I'm saying? It's like we're just opening it up for cheating and then disguising it as, well, I'm here to meet friends. It's not healthy. I don't think it's good. I'm maintaining that. I'm open to being wrong. If you're listening to this, you think that's wrong, that's cool. Throw it in the chat, throw it in the comments. I'm open. I might be wrong about this whole damn story for all I know. I'm always open to being incorrect, but I'm not, but I'm pretty good at what I do as well. So, you have to prove things, right? So that one is kind of open. But besides that, she ends up talking to an ex-boyfriend, cheating with the ex-boyfriend, which, I'm sorry, being with a person in a relationship and then talking to an ex about how you're going to dump this loser that you're with while you're pretty much living with him and living off of him, that's not healthy behavior. All right. That's not behavior that's going to go well. Okay. Now, we already went over the body cam footage. All right. So she clearly has a history of attacking him and starting fights and starting problems. This is not the profile of somebody who's trapped by an abuser. I challenge you to go talk to anyone who's actually been trafficked or look at interviews from any of these poor girls who have been trafficked. And there's a lot of them out there. Where was the time where she started a fight because the trafficker's feet were dirty and then attacked him and tried to steer the vehicle into the side of the road? Tell me where that story is. I'm waiting to hear it. Okay. Where it's an actual trafficking scenario, an actual serious abuse scenario where somebody has to escape the relationship because the man is so abusive. And by the way, those things do happen, and they happen way too often. And we need to fight against those things. There are seriously abusive, dangerous men out there. Women need to not get with those guys. And we need to do something about those guys and put those guys away. But if we blur the lines between actually abusive men and just any guy who, is in a scenario with a girl that's unhealthy, when we expand that definition of abuse to mean anything a girl doesn't like, now we lose so much that is so damaging to our ability to fight against actual abuse victims, right? Or fight for actual abuse victims and fight against actual abusers. All right. We're damaging to people who are actual victims by pretending that everybody's a victim. And that's the biggest problem with this. Final betrayal is the day that she disappears. She's texting her ex-boyfriend. She's trying to call the ex-boyfriend, not in duress because she's running away and this murderer is chasing her, but because she's, wants to leave him and she's preparing to leave him. And she's telling her mom, like, I'm going to take the van on my own. And the mom is like, oh, you guys are breaking up. And she's like, haha, no, I can, like, in a very cavalier way, when you read the text, very glib attitude, very narcissistically glib attitude. No, I realize I can make more money on my own, with my van blog, pretty much. So she realized she can, as a girl who presents herself as single on the internet, which is true, she can make more money. So she's going to ditch this guy. She's going to discard this guy. He has nothing. He means nothing more. So this guy has been handling her crap, handling her anxiety, partially funding the trip, providing a safety net, being her support, and also being emotionally weak and needy and erratic. All right. Also being those things because he's not a stable person. But he's making all these sacrifices for her in his mind. And his whole life is her dream. Like, what did this guy have? He had nothing. He had nothing except for her dream and her her life, her dream, her image. That was all he had. He built his life around that. And when she threatened to take that away, which based on the text to her mother, based on the calls to the ex-boyfriend, all right, based on the incidences and the arguments, all right, people were saying that they seemed like they were in an argument, before they ate out somewhere and they were being in an argument. She was preparing to leave him. She was preparing to do what narcissists do after devaluing somebody, after running him through the ringer, and she was going to leave him and she was going to ditch him. Now, maybe ditching him was a good idea, but maybe the relationship shouldn't have happened, or should have been broken up a long time ago. But she didn't do it in a way where I'm in an unhealthy relationship, I need to break this up. She did it in a way where she says, I'm going to take as much as I can out of this deal, take as much as I can from this guy. And once I realize I can be stable and good on my own, now I leave him. That's called using somebody. Women, when you do that sort of thing to men, you're actually using the man. Maybe you don't care, whatever, but you don't get a pass for that. All right. And so that's what was happening. And so this emotionally, weak, narcissistic, entitled boyfriend can't emotionally handle the fact that she's going to leave. They get into a physical altercation again. Whether she could have been the aggressor, we really don't know. We have evidence that she was the aggressor before. So, but we don't have any evidence of him ever being the aggressor, actually, meaning starting the fight. But he, the evidence shows that he's the one who took her life. So it looks like this emotionally weak man ended up in a physical altercation, one of many that had happened in this relationship. He was emotionally weak, narcissistic in traits himself. And he also had, a strong sense of entitlement, being willing to take from others. And when his dream or his purpose was being taken away from him, he thought he could, taking somebody's life, losing his emotional self-control, really. I don't think it was premeditated, but losing this emotional self-control to the point where he can take a girl's life, that's what happens. And then he takes her life. And then he hides it, and then he goes into manipulation mode, trying to create an alibi for himself, and then eventually takes his own life. And that's the story. It's a tragic story of two very dysfunctional people, one of which, the woman, who is very social media brained and narcissistic. All right, so two things can exist at once. She can be a social media brained girl who is exhibiting, covert narcissistic traits. And he can also be a guy who's not afraid to put his hands on a woman and not, is willing to put his hands on a woman when he doesn't feel like his needs are being met. And they got into a relationship, and she ended up, having her life taken away because of that. And then he took his own life away because he had no value. Right. So that's what the story is. Okay. That's the true story. And it's a lesson for young girls. The story of the young girl who was innocent and didn't do anything wrong, just like all you other young girls out there who never do anything wrong. No accountability for you. Oh, she was a victim. That doesn't do anything to empower young girls. And it's not the truth. And there's things that you guys need to understand about your relationships, especially younger people, but people of any age, because this is the kind of shit. Social media isn't going anywhere. So women are addicted to social media, and it's just as damaging to a woman's brain when they're seriously addicted to it, as porn would be to a guy's brain. And so these social media addicted brained women have narcissistic behaviors, and you guys are going to go on dates with them. So we probably need to break down the reality of a story like this since it's out there. Now, again, if the families chose to keep this a private affair, you know, we're going to honor the deceased in the best way that we can, and let the story, you know, just go to the wayside, then I wouldn't be talking about it today. But no, they chose to have that documentary and to prevent a story that doesn't tell the truth. So now here we are. All right. If someone's mad about my narrative, how dare you? Why should you say things bad about this person? She's not alive anymore. Blah, blah. No. Why do we have a documentary where the family presents this one side of a story? It doesn't really present the entire truth of the matter. Why do we have that? Because there's a lot of these unanswered questions point more to what I'm saying versus what the documentary and media is saying. And there's an agenda that's in play. You guys need to understand there's an agenda. And that is why the untruth is being told. And that's why we're talking about it today and right now to fight against that. Now, let's have some lessons, call to action. But actually, before that, I am going to look at some of the comments. And some of you guys are hilarious. What is this? All right. Hopefully I clicked. I didn't read the whole thing. 99% of people believe she was saintly. They need to believe in that fantasy. She should have been arrested, but her crying got her special treatment. Well, that happens. You know, girls have power when they cry, right? I mean, that's true. They can be manipulative. I don't know if she should have been around. I'm actually going to say that I think the cops handled it well because the guy, so that's my opinion. You guys can, I could be wrong. Some people will say she should have been arrested. I mean, what would arresting her have accomplished? He was still going to be waiting for her when she gets out of being arrested. An arrest wouldn't have stopped the relationship. There was nothing those cops could have done that would have prevented what happened later, because it wasn't later that day. It was, I don't know what the timeline was, but it was probably like several weeks after that domestic dispute, right? Like, I mean, if not months. So it's not like it's not like she showed up missing the next day after the domestic thing. It's so I think the cops did everything that they could have reasonably with the information they had, because, you know, that's another thing. Domestic disputes happen. And sometimes the part you guys don't see is it's not always a terrible abuser guy you beating up a girl or a narcissistic, terrible woman getting physical with a guy. Sometimes stuff happens and two people have mental and emotional issues and they end up getting help, right? There's people that get help for their stuff and actually change and improve. On the female, there's women who get help and don't act like that, you know, learn how to control their emotions. And there's men too. And sometimes putting two people together with the wrong toxic traits in combination causes physical altercation. That's human nature. And it's very hard for people to accept because most people want to believe I would never do that. And they want to say, oh, there's good and bad people out there and bad people do this. But that's binary thinking. We'll go back to that IQ test, right? Sometimes ideas can exist in the same area. Sometimes multiple things can be true or false, right? And so, you know, the cops are in a tough spot, and taking everybody to jail just automatically isn't a good policy. There's a lot of times where sometimes you just need to separate for the evening. Particularly, and now this is not the case with this couple, but I'll just say in a general sense, particularly when substances are involved. Sometimes, not just sometimes, oftentimes when someone has an alcohol problem or a drug problem, what follows is domestic, you know, domestic violence and fighting, right? And physical altercation. And if you take the drug or the alcohol out of the equation, those people are not fighting each other. And it's a totally different scenario. So you don't know the scenario people are in. And cops have to respond to that. They have a tough job. I don't think the police, there did anything wrong. I think they actually did all the right things. You're just dealing with a toxic, couple with two people with serious emotional and mental problems who are in this relationship dynamic. And the police aren't going to break up that dynamic with a criminal charge. That's just my thought, Yeah, I was just watching this on Netflix. Was surprised with the scene as she was the one attacking him. Right. It's crazy, isn't it? Like, she's clearly the one who was the aggressing and attacking. And when you go through the body cam footage and find the clips that I showed, which were in addition to, like, they weren't some of those clips were not in this full story, was not presented on the documentary. But even on the documentary, though, you can see that she's clearly the aggressor. How do people miss this? But it goes back to that Patrice O'Neal bit. It's like she gets a pass. She gets a pass because she has a vagina and she's a cute white girl. I mean, that's how crazy our society is right now. That's to the level that simping is become. Women will just, pile on to the women. Not every woman, but because there's a lot of women who saw the same thing. But there's a lot of women who just pile on and support the woman no matter what, regardless of what the evidence is. And there's a lot of guys with the simping mindset, right, who are trying to appease the girls who are going with the woman, and they're going to say, no matter what happened, whatever the facts are, they just jump on it. It's crazy. It's crazy. You know what I mean? This is interesting. I love to see that study, man. Like, if you want to post it in my comment section, if you find it or shoot it to me, like if you're in my community at school, send it to me. Because I'm always looking at studies, but people in prison, yeah, maybe. I think that a lot of people think they're the victim when they're not. But I mean, I'd be interested to see that study of how many people, and this is a great comment too. There are people out there who can bring out the worst in you. And that is correct. And that is one of our lessons here. Okay. So let's go through the lessons because there's stuff you can learn from this. This isn't just piling on some story, right? To pile on whatever, some media thing that, we want to look at how this can affect your life in a positive way, what lessons you can come from it. Otherwise, don't waste your time with media. I mean, that's a general rule, a mindset rule, if you guys would like one, okay, that my guys in my community understand is you don't just consume media and just to gossip, consume political stuff, consume a bunch of news, just to gossip and not think about anything. You want to think about these stories in context because if you're wasting your time with them, you want to at least have it benefit your life somehow. And we're going to do that now. So what are some things we can learn? First thing is don't believe everything you hear or read. That includes from me, that includes from anybody. My objective here is to analyze human behavior, to decipher truths that are out there about relationship dynamics, and to do that in order to help my clients and people who are trying to have good relationships, right? And have good lives, and men out there who are trying to make themselves better. Okay. So you can't make yourself better and have good relationships if you don't know the truth of what's actually happening, because your information that you're going to take action on is, if it's based on lies, if it's based on things that are not true, then that action you're going to take isn't going to get you the results you want. You see what I'm saying? And so, like, you have to know the truth about things. And then, so my goal or my objective is to try to decipher what that truth is, particularly if the media isn't, being truthful. Okay. You can't believe everything you read or hear. My guys in my mastermind group and guys who are in my school community, they understand you have to unplug from the narratives that are going on out there. Because when someone is sending you a message, when someone's giving you a narrative, that narrative or that message is designed to benefit them, the messenger. It's not designed to tell you the truth. It's not designed to help you, okay? All these socially conditioned ideas you have about relationships, about yourself, about you as a man, even stuff that you think you're getting from alternative sources, like, oh, I read this, this manosphere content creator said to be a high value man, whether it's good or whether it's bad, whether it benefits you or whether it doesn't. That message is designed to help the messenger, not necessarily you. You might, as a secondary effect, get benefited from the message, or you might not. So you have to learn how to filter the programming that's out there. All the media sources, to include Netflix, produced documentaries and sources that presented a narrative. Why would they present that narrative? It benefits them. It's more popular to say this girl was a victim. You take the avatar of an angelic person who happens to be a cute young little white girl who comes across as being so innocent, right? And so whatever, ignoring all the covert narcissism. And you present this image and then, she was unalived. Isn't that terrible? Look at these terrible, she got roped up in this terrible abuse. That's a more popular narrative than anything else. What is Netflix? What do media sources want? They want your views. They want you to listen to a story and go, and follow a story. They want you to be outraged because the innocent girl had all these terrible things happen to her. The narrative is not true because it benefits those who are telling the story. Okay? You have to be able to filter these things to find the truth, or you can't take action in your life that makes sense and that gets you what you need to get in life. All right? So don't believe everything you read and hear. That's the first thing. If you walk away with nothing else, that's pretty good. Next thing is, if you're a guy out in the dating market, do not get into anything serious with a girl like this. All right? First of all, don't get into anything serious with a woman who thinks that she wants to go be a homeless person in a van. That is being promoted out there right now as being this wonderful, great idea. Okay, there are some people who do the van lifestyle who are more rooted in reality and have figured out how to make their money doing it, have figured out how to finance it, and they're living their dreams. That's cool. Those people are being objective. But then there's this whole cohort of usually white single women who have a dream of wanting to go off in a van and just live a dream life as a homeless person without any brain mindset about the hardship involved in that. Dealing with breakdowns, dealing with vehicle repairs, dealing with safety, okay? Handling your own safety wherever you're at, dealing with paying your bills, paying for gas, paying for food. There's realities in life, okay? There's stuff you have to do. There's work that has to happen. You have tons of girls out there who have the social media fantasy of being a homeless person in a van with no objective thought of how to make that happen. They do not get in a relationship with that girl. Okay. That girl is looking for some guy to swoop in and fund her dreams. That girl is not going to be rooted in reality. That girl is social media brained because she's looking at the image of van life influencers or whoever influencers and not looking at the practical aspects of how to get there. If that's the person you're dating, don't wife her up. Don't be in a relationship with that person. Seriously, don't do it. Okay? You're going to bring yourself a lot of hardship and a lot of stupidity. It is not your job as a man to offer a girl a better life. Sorry, ladies. Sorry, simps. It's not your job as a man to offer anybody a better life other than maybe your children. It's your job to build your own life and find a girl who's a good companion to that. All right? It's not your job to rescue and save some girl and fund some girl's dreams, particularly if they don't match your dreams, particularly if she's only with you to fund and support those dreams. If she's not with you guys for you, and what's more important is the appearances and the imagery of some thing she wants to do in her own life, she's not the right girl. She's probably not the right girl for anybody. That girl needs help, needs therapy, right? And you're not going to be your therapist. So guys, don't ever get involved with a girl like this, because even if Gabby was not a clinical narcissist, I don't know. And I actually don't think I just don't have any evidence to say that she was that from the start. But clearly what she was somebody who had been infected by social media addiction. And that made her become this covert narcissist and to care only about herself and not to care about other people. That's what it turns into. You never want to date that person. And so girls who are on the date with you and they're on their TikTok on the first date, that should be the last date. You know what I'm saying? And I know you younger guys are dealing with this shit more than the older guys, but it happens even with the older guys. You're out on a date, you're with a girl, and she can't stay off her phone. Next her, dude. Don't go with these, guys who some of you guys need to get off the internet too. All right. Because you're too busy watching girls like on Fresh and Fit or wherever. Okay. Who are, the white cloth, battle hour or whatever. And these girls are social media brained and they have OnlyFans accounts. And you guys think these are real girls. They're not. Okay. They're fake women with terrible lives and a terrible mental health. You guys, there's plenty of women out there who are in the real world. You need to go meet them. Okay. And if you're going to go travel, by the way, I've traveled with my girlfriend and done stints of a couple of weeks of traveling out of a vehicle. Great time. Awesome time. But I also know how to fund it. We also have reality. You know what I'm saying? We're not sitting here, and it's also not being blogged on social media to try to present some fantasy to other people. You see what I'm saying? So we got to do not go with a girl who wants to be a homeless girl in a van. All right. So that's number 2. Next thing, if this guy, Brian, resembles any of you, you need to change your life immediately. All right. This guy was the avatar of a loser Zoomer male. He's entitled. He only cared about, he was the victim. He was almost like a covert narcissist as well. And I'm not somebody, if you follow my shit, I'm not somebody who sits here and calls everybody, like there's channels out there that just calls everybody narcissists all the time. Like they overuse the word. I may sound like that in this video if you never heard me before, but these two have those traits. You don't just murder somebody and then cover and not have something wrong with you. You know what I'm saying? So like this guy clearly had stuff that was wrong with him. They trace that and document that pretty well in the documentary. So I don't need to cover that as much here, but I do need to say the point. This video is not a defense of him. Okay. If you're a guy who has no purpose in life, no value you're offering to the world, you're living off of other people, and you find that you're trying to sacrifice yourself for somebody else, and then when they don't do what you want, you're emotionally erratic and starting fights and even getting into violent encounters with some girl, you need to drastically change your life. I don't think this guy was born to be a murderer. In fact, there's not a single incident with her having marks on her body from serial abuse or anything like that. Like you don't have a history or track record of him laying hands on her other than the one body cam thing that showed she started the fight. So like, we don't have evidence to assume this guy was a serial abuser. What it does appear to be, though, is he is a guy who had mental health problems because he grew up with his parents creating a safety umbrella for him. He doesn't know what masculinity is. He doesn't know how to become a dominant man. He doesn't know how to offer value to the world. He doesn't have a mindset to protect others and care about other people. Like the guy is not a man, right? That's what you're dealing with. This is the consequence. Ladies, Ladies out there who's been slamming on masculinity for the last decade, this is the consequence of that. Is you have these people with penises who are not men. This guy was not a man. He's not living life for himself on his own terms, where he offers value to others and value to the world. That's a problem. And when you don't have that, this is what you end up with. There's a ton of weak little Zoomer males and bitch-ass males who let their girlfriends walk all over them, cheat on them. They have no boundaries, but then they blow up emotionally all the time to the point of getting physical and abusive. This isn't the first time a weak little male took a bunch of crap from a girl, didn't have good boundaries, didn't have the courage to leave, then finally loses his shit and gets physical. It's not the first time that's happened. It happens all the time, every week in America. So if you're this guy, you need to fix your life, all right? And you probably need a lot more than what I can give you at first. You need to start with a therapist. Don't even call me for coaching if you're this fucked up. Go into therapy first. Start to work on yourself, and then maybe come see me later if you've done some work, all right? Because this is not where you need to be. And women, you need to get off social media and not date this guy. For the 5 women that are now watching, I don't know how many women are actually watching, but you have to, not be in these relationships with these weak guys. A weak guy like this guy is a dangerous guy. Think about it. A strong guy who's physically strong and mentally strong is going to have the mental and emotional self-control to not beat the crap out of you when you upset him, all right? He may have the ability to do damage, but he's not going to do that damage to you because he has emotional self-control, all right? Whereas you go with a weak guy who may be physically weaker as well, he's still physically stronger than you as a woman. And he's less emotionally self-controlled. So when you have a fight or problem, or he's not feeling good emotionally, you're more at risk for abuse by that weaker guy. That's the reality of it. So you need to stop getting into situations with weaker guys and pushing them around. And you need to seek out real men in your life. That's what you need to do if you're a girl. So don't date this guy either. Don't be this guy. Don't date this guy. You need to develop your inner game mindset. All right. In your mindset, you need to develop your inner game. You need to develop your mindset as a man and as a woman. For those of you watching this, stop looking to other people to try to design your life for you. Stop looking to the internet, which is an avatar and a simulation of reality. It's not real life. Stop looking at the internet and making that the benchmark for how you need to live your life. And start living life on your own terms and facing the realities and hardships of life so that you can overcome those realities and hardships and do better for yourself. And if you're watching this and you're a man and you're not there yet, I have a link in the description. It's to my community. I'm helping build up better men. I'm helping build up better relationships. Sorry, ladies, it is a men's community. I don't have one for women yet. If I grow big enough and I have enough women who are interested, I'll create one. But for now, it's a men's community, and it's there. It's for free. Okay. A lot of people do paid coaching programs with me, but this community is free. And this is to help you build yourself up and be a better, stronger version of yourself, be a better man, and to learn how to date better women. Because if you're dating better women, you'll never find yourself in a scenario that these two found themselves in, okay? I don't have any sympathy for Brian in this equation. I think he had a lot of problems and he was very selfish. And he got somebody, and he did a horrible thing to somebody else and himself. And he probably was pretty horrible to people just out of being narcissistic and selfish for much of his life, his adult life at least. And that's a shame. But there's some of you out there who maybe can do a lot better than you're doing. And that's what that community is for. It's to help you. All right. I got a lot of high value men out there, by definition, who are killing it in life, and they're there making themselves just a little bit better. Then I have guys who are struggling and not quite there yet, but have that potential, and that could be you. All right. So if you have, I need to get in that community, check it out for yourself. Link is in the description. That's it. Hopefully you guys enjoyed the breakdown, and hopefully it makes sense. And hopefully if you were believing in the documentary Netflix narrative, hopefully this helps you challenge that in a healthy way. I'm not your enemy. I'm here to help. All right. And I'm not here to just slam on other people. We're here to do better. And hopefully after this video, you'll do a little bit better. And, because the thing is, the harsh reality is the social media delusion. Okay. Social media delusion kills. Most people are killed slowly by social media delusion because it eats away at their life slowly and eats away at their well-being. But you could be in a delusion. It could be something where you actually lose your life and not just your relationship. Social media could actually kill you if you're caught up in that delusion, as we see here. And sometimes that does happen. So don't let that be you. Take care.